Up to this point, everything you've learned has been internal. Your structure had to bear force without collapse, your muscles had to fire in the correct order, your connective system had to transmit force without loss, and your nervous system had to allow clean signal throughout the system. All of that can be true, and you can still miss what actually matters. Understanding movement from the inside is meaningless if you can't recognize it from the outside. Chapter 5 exists to solve that problem. This chapter is not about learning new techniques. It's not about drills. It's not about fixing movement with verbal commands or cues. It's about learning to read movement accurately, honestly, and without illusion. Most training mistakes movement for shape. Most correction targets what looks wrong on the surface rather than what actually is failing underneath. Chapter 5 reframes movement as grammar. Technique is a sentence. Movement grammar determines whether that sentence holds together or falls apart. Bad movement is not the wrong technique. It's broken grammar. Good movement is not dependent on a style or tradition. It is structurally coherent expression that survives real conditions. This distinction changes everything. When movement is treated as grammar, compensation becomes readable. Inefficiency becomes obvious. You stop arguing with what you see and begin to interpret it. Chapter 5 introduces kinesiology not as an academic classification, but as a combat literacy. The practical study of motion under load, fatigue, timing, and consequences. In this context, observation becomes your most powerful tool. Compensation is not adaptation, it's evidence. When one joint loses integrity under load, another area pays the price. When sequencing breaks down, effort rushes in to disguise that failure. When clarity fades, tension fills the gap. Watch a sparring partner strike or step. A slight buckle, a delayed recovery, an extra adjustment on landing. The movement still completes, but the grammar is off. Balance is borrowed instead of owned. Chapter 5 teaches you to slow perception without freezing action. Dynamic stability becomes visible. Joint integrity under motion becomes readable. Efficiency shows itself in what is absent. Clean movement looks quiet. Waste looks busy. This chapter also dismantles the myth of correction through control. Overcorrection breeds rigidity. Rigidity destroys adaptability. Chapter 5 emphasizes awareness over interference. You do not force the body into compliance. You observe consistently until the system begins to resolve itself. This is why screening is not a checklist. It's a perception. Trained eyes that recognize what is happening, not what should be happening. The warrior scholar does not impose form on the body. They reveal structure. They watch how load is negotiated in real time. They see where balance is borrowed instead of maintained. They recognize when movement merely is surviving rather than expressing. This chapter makes that possible. It also closes the loop. Structure from Chapter 1 becomes visible. Sequencing from Chapter 2 becomes readable. Continuity from Chapter 3 becomes observable. Signal from Chapter 4 becomes evident in timing and restraint. Nothing new is added. Everything becomes clear. This clarity matters because once movement can be seen honestly, it can be measured without being reduced to simplistic rules. And that is the threshold. When movement becomes measurable, relationships emerge. Load reveals direction, direction reveals leverage, and timing reveals consequence. At that point, the body is no longer just moving. It is obeying laws. That is where this path leads to next.